Okay, greetings, brothers and sisters. Today's Friday, May 30th. This video will be up tomorrow on Saturday. Um, this is going to be the introduction to the 197th edition of the Journey series, I believe. I had a bunch of comments so I get to. A lot of them have spiritual type questions, but there were some other ones. This one I think was a funny one. Somebody wrote to me, and I'm not sure if the person is joking or not, which you never know, right? But they say, Paul, you might be getting irradiated. Buy a nickel, copper, silver, zinc infused bandana to protect your cranium from status status radio waves. Well, I definitely get irradiated because we all are, because there's all kinds of stuff bouncing around. I showed you that NASA video, which shows they use the word bombarded with all these various frequencies. I was talking about gamma rays in the last one because of the Hulk, right? There's all these things. I forget which use gamma rays, but they have all this stuff. So, we're all getting zapped. And I'm aware of, like I had a hat that when I went outside it's lined with, I don't want to say silver thread, but something. And I didn't know if it worked or not. But if I had to walk around with a bandana with nickel, copper, silver, and zinc all the time, if that's where we're headed, right? I'm just not a bandana wearing person. It's time to pack it in. So there's that. But there was these other things here. I'll just go in the order of the comments. Okay, this one I think I want to start with anyway. Somebody wrote, it took a couple of weeks, but I finally caught up on this video now. I forgot what video it was, but you mentioned some feeling of disappointment regarding the low number of listeners who have tried Saj Marg. The person, that's how you spell it, SAHAJMARG. I don't think disappointment is the right way to phrase it. It's certainly disappointment there, and I don't know if I use the word disappointed. It's just kind of a slap in the face by reality. And I'll talk a little bit more about that. Let me read more of the comment. I can understand that, and would probably feel similarly if I were in your shoes. I also seem confused on some things and might not word it as clearly as I'd like. I am confused because I know if I misunderstood some things you've previously said regarding the practice and people with addiction or mental health issues not being suitable for it. But then I also recalled there being a story about Babaji smoking his hookah or something all the time until it got lost or something, and he was chill about it, which doesn't sound like someone who had the demons of addiction on him. Well, he smoked a tobacco hookah, which I guess is addictive. And how could he? Being a spiritual master, although I'm sure there are plenty of practitioners who do smoke, definitely some with mental health issues. But many of those, such as Daji faithfuls, also sound like they were benefiting from any of it before Daji. I don't know if because the individuals suck or because of their various afflictions. I feel like I've probably misunderstood something or maybe lots of things along the way. All I know is I think the practice sounds intriguing, but also for some reason I'm impression that aside from my inability to meditate, I'm not suitable for it because of my addiction and mental health issues. I like to listen about the practice and your experience. Some of the stories make me wish I'd been around for the pre-Daji era because it sounds like it was an amazing experience. There's more to the comment. Let me just address that part. It's kind of a two-part thing I've copied here. And so for the first part, if you're currently using alcohol or drugs, it doesn't work. But I know some people, there are some, a few things about it. Like, I don't know if people have occasionally a glass of wine. I know a preceptor who said, we were waiting in a line for food, like at a gathering. And there's a preceptor who's from my area in Massachusetts, and my brother and I were talking to him, and my brother went like, about drinking. Come on, you guys drink a little bit, right? And the guy admitted to drinking an occasional glass of wine. He was in charge of some hospital. Him and he was, and these long-standing preceptors worked underneath him. I like this guy. I went to his house for a few sittings. His wife didn't do the practice, but he was, he was kind of an interesting person. But he was, kind of just someone who was semi into it. There was a time I was told a story where Babaji and Charji were out in Shah Jahanpur, where Babaji lived, and it was cold. Like Charji came from southern India, where my 3 years stay there, it never once got above 74 degrees. That was the coldest it ever got in 3 years, and that was probably very rare. It was usually in the 80s. It didn't get too hot there, but the humidity was pretty bad. It was near the ocean. It's where like Florida would be if it was America. It was like the Florida part of India. It was Sri Lanka off the coast, which would be similar to Cuba. So, it was he was not used to these guys who came up from southern India. These Brahmins wouldn't be used to the winters that were probably 40 degrees at night. I mean, I guess maybe I don't think they got any snow there, but it was cold, probably sort of like someplace in the I don't know what compare that to America, but there's it's a little bit mountainous up there in northern India, and so it gets a little bit cold. And there's snow in some places in India, but not it's not, the winters are pretty mild, but for us, but for them it's not. And they're sitting outside. It was cold, and Babaji busted out a bottle of brandy, and they each took a sip, like a small sip, like Babaji wasn't a drinker, just to keep warm. And then he said to Charji, "This is private talk. Don't say anything about it." And so, there's some elements of that kind of thing where it's not. I mean, it's like having alcohol in tinctures, for example. We make tinctures out of alcohol, and there's no effects. You don't feel the effects because you're taking drops of the. You take herbs and soak it in half vodka, 100 proof vodka, and half water. And it takes all the nutrients out of like we do it with, like, say, a goldenrod. And my wife does those tinctures, but so things like that. But so but if somebody is actively addicted, and then it depends on what everyone has mental health issues. Like it depends on what the person's mental health issues are. I mean, it's if somebody's actively using a lot of drugs or alcohol, then the system's not going to work for them. It's not going to feel anything, right? And so, I mean, anybody can try it. Like if it's on the internet, and it's a matter of what you don't want is the transmission to strengthen anything you're doing. Like you had to clean. That's why there's a cleaning process. And so. But there's a couple of examples, like Babaji had a guy come to him who was drinking alcohol. And the guy started, the Indians would go and they would cry, and I've seen this happen. They would get hysterical. Some of the Indian people would get like hysterical when they were, oh my God, I'm such a bad person. They'd make a big show of it. And this guy came in and started, crying and said he was drinking alcohol. And Babaji said, "Oh, that's no problem. In fact, drink as much as you want. The only problem is, not the only condition is that when you drink, think I'm taking the drink and not you. So every time you drink alcohol, think that I'm the one drinking and not you. And you can drink as much as you want." And the guy's like, "Oh, that's great. This what a wonderful system." So he left and he went to take a drink, and he thought Babaji was taking the drink, and it's not him. He started throwing up. And he never drank again. Like he lost all, so, whatever. The issues with, again, like if people are taking prescription medication, like it's each person has to understand for themselves. I was taking OxyContin after an operation, and my meditation sucked. Like I couldn't meditate because it disrupts that, and alcohol makes it so you can't feel this. Alcohol is when you meditate, there's a level of intoxication, and so for me, like if I walk through a bar, like I can even feel it, like I can feel the intoxication, like in the air. It's weird. When I was younger, I used to go to bars all the time, and now like it makes me like I get this sort of I don't want to call it like vertigo, but I can feel like intoxicated just by being more sensitive to the atmosphere, or whatever it is. But anybody can try the system and see if it's effective. At this point, it's kind of to me like somebody wins the lotto, because I recognize that my situation with Saj Marg is not, I want to say unique, but semi-unique. I didn't like to meditate. I tried to meditate. I had done some yoga to be a better basketball player. So in these yoga courses, they had meditation. And so I had done some of these things. I had just taken a New Age course with I was breaking up with my ex-girlfriend. We went through this, therapy thing, and, it was some New Age stuff. And it was pretty good. It was interesting. But, I wasn't thinking about God. Like I thought about God a lot when I was in like, the end of my elementary. When I was a kid, I thought about God all the time. And then when I was in 8th grade, my mom was going to prayer meetings. I thought about God. And then, I kind of had a thing with my parents. I caught them lying. And then, I associated that with, her. And it was about these kids came over to my house that were, for these prayer meetings. And sometimes I do the prayer meetings with my parents. And I went to some of these things with my mom. But mostly it was these people sitting around our living room praying. And my dad was involved, and he was like, mad at God. So like it was weird. And so, and these kids were telling me things that, were personal things that they, heard from my parents. And like, I was like, I asked my parents about it. They said, no, they didn't say anything. I'm like, of course you did. Like, well, like I'm like, well, there's no way. And so, and I realized there's a lot of gossip, a lot of like, and from what I experienced with the prayer meetings, I didn't, the people were, I mean, some of them were maybe more spiritual than others, but I thought they were all just fakers, because they would go to do this stuff and pretend to be religious, but there's a lot of drama in the group. That was the other thing. They had all this drama. And so, I kind of thought, I associated that with God. I kind of like thought the church and the religion sucked because people are shitty. I was like 13, 14 years old. And all these, and we ended up moving, and there was like a prayer meeting for kids, some Christian thing. I went, and it was at these people's house, and there was like a bunch of girls that were, that were running this thing. There was some of them where one was maybe my age and one was maybe younger, but there was like they had like 5 girls or something that were all, supposedly Christian. And then I saw them in high school, and they were just horrible people. So I started smoking pot and hanging out with there's a Billy Joel song. I'd rather laugh with the sinners and cries with the saints. So like whatever it was. Like I didn't have much respect for people who claimed to be godly. And then I, for some number of years, I didn't think about God at all till I started doing the Saj Marg practice, right? But I certainly didn't think of myself as a spiritual seeker. But I went over to my preceptor's house, Fred's house, and it was pouring rain, and I felt something special was going to happen, and it did. And it was like a moment where I had undeniable proof that this thing, Saj Marg, was like incredible, and it was, it was a real deal. I mean, I had a transformational experience, but, that was a rare occasion. Like, people just don't get that, especially in their first sittings. And just all the things that came together to make that happen. And if I didn't have that experience, I wouldn't have stayed. Like, it was more subtle. Like, if I had I have these much subtler sittings that aren't such a profound experience, the big experiences. I mean, more often than not, it's a subtle experience, and people may or may not feel the transmission. They may or may not, and if they do, it's something subtle. But I had a profound experience, and I was convinced from like day one. And then I read the books and everything. I just loved everything about it, and it was just, I recognized that that didn't have to happen that way for me. It could have easily not. It was like almost like a winning the lotto. Like it was the right day and the right time, and and whatever, or it was my destiny or whatever it was. But like had it not been exactly the way it was, and then all the experiences I've had since have kept me going. But it's not, the experiences become memories. They're not, when you're having them, they're great. But other than that, you just, it's a memory of something. It's not, you don't, it's a, you feel the transmission. You have a spiritual experience of God. But the system has proven itself to me over and over again since that time. And I jumped into it 100%, like right off the bat. But it's a rare thing. Like, so, most people don't have that. And, the majority of people don't have that. And, people who do feel something oftentimes just, they lose it. Like after a while, they start having doubts about their old experiences, or, it's a hard thing to stick with, because everything in our society is pulling you in a material direction, and it's easy to get, dragged away. And a lot of people feel like they don't deserve it. A lot of people think, most people, I would say 95% of people don't feel like they deserve God's love. And so there's lots of people who do the meditation. I know some of them who felt bad about not doing the practice the way it was said, and, like they thought they were breaking some rules, and they felt almost like a sense of, I don't deserve to do this thing, which is silly because nobody deserves it. Like it's, in a sense of, I mean, everybody deserves God's love because it's inside of you. But, nobody deserves the spiritual elevation that you're getting, the evolution you're getting from Sajmark's system, because it's kind of like a Hail Mary to save the human race. So that's a big part of it. Like people they're not craving it. They don't want it. I recently talked about how I was listening to this Charji talk, Master Charji, and he said, he asked a question, how many people want liberation today, which they would think meant they were going to die, that they would die and they would be liberated. And now nobody raised their hands. Like he was doing it as a joke. But, people don't want it. Like they don't, they all want to, he talked about how people would say, well, I have to live 5 more years to get my kids settled, and, I got some things I got to take care of, like whatever. Liberation is the equivalent to going to heaven, right? Except it's, you don't have to come back to planet Earth. And most people want to come back, even if their lives are miserable, because they don't know anything else. And, so, I mean, even people who grow up with the idea of liberation and spirituality being a good thing, they don't really want it. So going back to this idea of disappointment, I mean, I'm well aware that people don't want spirituality. Like they want God when they need God. They want God when things are difficult, when they're desperate. And, people want God and all of a sudden think about God a lot when their times are tough, and they pray. But for the most part, people want to enjoy and indulge and do whatever they want to do and not think about God. And so, I'm well aware of that, and I'm well aware of how lucky I am that I had the experience that I had, and everything, all the dominoes fell into place for me to do to have this experiences and the things that have happened for me to stick with this system. And so, it's not like I'm personally special or something in terms of my, who I was as a person or my attitude. Like I wasn't, I wasn't suited for this thing as a person. It's just that it, it grabbed a hold of me in a way that was undeniable. And whatever I did in a past life or whatever my destiny was, it was, a blessing. And, I wish other people had those, same blessings. Because like I said, I'm kind of a slacker, and I do pretty good at it. Like I'm pretty, committed to it as much as I could to be anything, but I'm not really, that kind of person. I'm not, meticulous or perfectionistic or any of these things. I do my best. But I recognize that people just don't have it, and most people have subtle experiences, and they just aren't into it. Like they're just not. I don't know, ready yet. I don't know what the I don't know what the problem is, but it's something that everybody should want because it's God's love, and it's something that everybody could do. But they have to be willing to change, and that's the bottom line. If people are willing to change, if somebody has addiction or you have mental health issues, maybe it's because you're lacking a connection to God. It depends on how, everybody has everyone can be diagnosed with something. So I can't speak specifically about it, but, if people are on medication and, whatever, they can try the meditation and see how effective it is. But, all these things are subject to your ability to be sensitive, and alcohol and drugs and things that impair your sensitivity. And then, all the other things that are in your life that are, it's hard for people to drop down into a deeper state of consciousness, whatever it is. And so there's all these things going against people. But the gratefulness meditation, anybody can try it. There's no, if it doesn't work, it's because of these reasons. And if you're have these, if you shouldn't be doing it, you won't want to do it. Like it's if it's having a negative effect, and it really won't have a negative effect. It'll just be uncomfortable. I mean, restlessness is part of the system as well. Like you have these really restless sittings. I've gone through months where my meditations were horrible. They were just restless, and just my condition wasn't didn't feel good. But I just was. You're going through a stage where that's the meditations. Anyways, let me finish up the rest of the comment. Here I got to go back and find the part 2 of it. I'm going to make it bigger here. So the second part here. Regardless of who does or does not try the practice, you're sharing your experience and knowledge is important for the future generations. You're helping preserve what is supposed to be, who the original masters were, their stories and intentions, the roots of where and why it all began, as well as where it all started to go wrong. You're recording an archivist source that's important to the mission. You're basically a modern day version of what Jesus' posse did, but at a different level because it's obviously not the same thing. But the similarities are there, and what you're doing is important. Yeah, maybe. I mean, I don't know. Like that's a possibility. I don't know. It's hard to say. Like there's no. It might be important for some of the people, and it's interesting, but I don't know. Like these things, there's so many of these spiritual movements that everything gets lost. I mean, there's literature right now that could easily be lost forever in the Sajmark system, and it's only, these books were written, in not even 100 years ago. Some of these books were written 20, 30 years ago. I mean, some of the talks were written even in 2014, 15, all this stuff is, it could be lost forever. Like, it's just like the real, there's no real Bible out there that has the verbatim, all the stuff in it that hasn't been edited, it hasn't been reworded and, translated, mistranslated, any number of things, right? There isn't there isn't the legitimate. I mean, that's sad to say. Like for people who are Christians, that you can't find one real Bible out there because it doesn't exist, right? It's just these edited versions, and so I mean, I don't know what will happen to all these videos when everything goes to shit or whatever here in the world. It's hard to say. So I don't know what I mean. Important for me, to do this because this is what I'm supposed to do. It may be important for some of you who. It sounds whatever. Here's another one here from someone who's, I think, has been listening for a while to these videos. Thanks for the video, Paul. When higher souls get the point of doing the right thing, does that differ between good and bad, especially if a world of gray where nothing is black and white? I think killing or hurting physically or holding them against their will in any way is wrong no matter what. I guess what's this video from? Wait, you think I'm not taking the election seriously? This is why Trump is president. I don't think I need to put a question mark on that. So I'm not sure what this person's talking about. Uh, with no exceptions, what most souls need today as society is pain to help them see this different paradigm. Can they look at a lot of things in physical? Can they look? They can look like that can look like a lot of things in the physical driven world. Just wondering if you could give your take on that, if you haven't already. Thanks again. Blessings. When higher souls, so let me get the question. When higher souls get to the point of doing the right thing, does that differ between good and bad, especially in a world of gray where nothing is black and white? I think physically hurting or physically holding them against their will, anyway, a matter. I'm not sure what that means. Is he talking about maybe like Christians, uh, trying to indoctrinate people like Aboriginal people or something? I'm not sure if that's the. There might have been a reference to something on the video, but it's not clear. But in terms of, you know, you're just doing what God tells you to do. There's a scene in the Mahabharata where the hero Arjuna of the Pandavas, he's like one of the best archers, and he's the guy that is going to have to kill like his uncle, beloved uncle, who's like one of the best people in the whole. He's on the wrong side because he just has to be because of the laws of Dharma, which no longer exist after the war's over and they break down during the war. And he's going to have to kill his teacher and, all these people he loves. Like he's going to kill family members and I mean, the other side is his cousins and they're fighting a war, it's these two, kings. And he can't do it. Like he can't kill all these people. And he starts to cry and he throws down his bow and arrow. And Krishna shows himself, and they're like a twin soul. Krishna is the cosmic functionaries, Vishnu's, his soul. Vishnu is the god of preservation, and he comes down. He's come down a number of times, when the earth needs some sort of specific work done. And then his ego, his human ego, there's is Arjuna. It's Nara and Narayana are these, and they often they always come down together. And so his ego and his soul, his soul is showing his ego his true nature, and it's like horrifying to Arjuna, like it's overwhelming, and it's just it's where that guy Oppenheimer said, "I now have become." He gives that talk after detonating the nuclear bomb. I've now become death, and all these things that he felt like Krishna when they created the nuclear bomb, which is interesting because they had these mantras, and it's hard to say if they're talking about some other weaponry, right? Because it's now translated to bow and arrows. But these guys had the ability through some sort of spiritual mantra to turn arrows into nuclear weapons. I mean, it's not something that people think happened. It's actually what they talk about. They talk about these in the Mahabharata actual book, the story. They have the power to turn these arrows through these various mantras and spiritual things into, these massive destructive weapons. And there's all these rules behind it, like you can't use it on civilian, like there's all these things, right? But Arjuna's like, he looks at Krishna's, his own soul's true nature, and he's like, fucking don't show me that again. I'll fight. I'll do whatever you want. I just don't want to ever see that again. That's fucking terrifying. He couldn't look at his own nature, right? Which is interesting because he's a divine being, a higher developed, like a god in a sense, like a cosmic functionary of. He's in charge of preservation throughout the universe, like a soul that spreads out throughout the whole universe, and makes sure that that there's an element of preservation. There's creation, destruction, and preservation. It's one of the three elements, right, in terms of the course of time. Like things are created, and things are destroyed, and in between there needs to be preservation. Between the creation and destruction. And so, there's he was a soldier and he was supposed to kill people. Like that's was his role. Like there's, if you're a soldier and you're, this is you have your, your duty and your thing, and they're also in war. There's things that you cross the line of your morality, right? The things that you don't feel comfortable doing because things break down. That's why I say you can't be a patriot and a devotee of God. At some point, you have to choose between your country and the divinity within you and your connection to God, like your morality. Eventually the two things can't. At some point they have to have the divergent paths, right? And so all you have to learn to do is follow God's orders. If your orders are, whatever they are, but you can't. One time my brother was talking to a senior preceptor, and my brother's always been, way more dramatic and over the top and more of a shock value person. Someone kind of grosser in different ways. He's had a different kind of life and stuff, and he's always been a bigger personality. And he's talking to the guy, and and my brother's been doing work at the ashram. He's the caretaker, and he's made the place really nice. Like they bought him a bobcat, like one of those like mini sort of tractor bulldozer kind of things. It had a backhoe on it and a scoop and things. And he did a lot of good things with it. And he, transformed the place. And one of the senior people said, "Oh, you've done a great job here. You must really love it here." And my brother, trying to act spiritual, and he's read the books and things about detachment. He goes, "Well, I'm doing the work because I'm assigned to work, but I have no attachment to the place. And if Master said to burn it down, this thing would be a weenie roast, right?" And the guy gets a little scared. He goes, "Yeah, but if you get the orders to burn it down, you're going to make sure it's actually the Master telling you to." Because my brother's trying to be dramatic or whatever. Like, he's not going to burn the place down, and he's not going to get ordered to do so. It'd be stupid. But he just was trying to, I don't know, like show off or whatever it is. But, the reality is if you connect to God the way you should, then you should start being able to understand what God wants you to do. It doesn't take much. It takes almost no effort. We're doing things right now to block. Everybody in the world is doing something to block their soul and God telling them what to do or encouraging them. It's not orders. It's subtle. It's there. Everyone knows what to do. Everyone knows what they're supposed to do deep down, but they've found ways to, clutter their perception to block the things out that you're hearing it all the time in your dreams. And the divine forces are constantly guiding everybody in the right direction, and people are willfully creating these ways of like defense mechanisms to block the orders, and they willfully are they want to do what they want to do, and the ego wants to do what it wants to do. It's not hard to connect to God and find out what you're supposed to be doing. You wake up and you just, you start feeling things. And when you do something wrong, you just feel, like you can feel it inside your heart. And when you start developing your heart as an instrument to navigate the world, you just feel that. They're like, "Oh yeah, that was the wrong thing." And then you go to meditate, it's just right there. And then you know what the right thing is to do. And you know what you have to do to correct your mistake. It's just like, it's very easy. It's a natural process. Like we've subverted or circumvented the natural process. If I am harsh when I talk about the powers that be in people, it's because of that, right? Because we all know what we're supposed to be doing. And then person, right? "All you sinners, ask for forgiveness, for your redemption is nigh. The day of the Lord is coming." You get a lot of these crazy fuck Christians that come in and say stupid shit like this. "All you sinners, ask for forgiveness, for your relationship is nigh. The day of the Lord is coming." Now, does this person think this is going to mean anything to anybody? Like this is, like it's silly. Like, why, you're not a sinner? Like, according to the, we're all saints and sinners. We're all potential saints and sinners. So, it's just a silly thing where, who gives a shit what other people do? You're responsible for yourself. I'm not responsible for all the other sinners. I don't give a shit about, do you really give a shit about other people's, like, I mean, I'd like people to do better, but that's up to them, right? Like, you're responsible for your sins and your fucking bullshit, right? Like, that's the difference between Sajmarg and this other, these people are like, the proselytizing and they got to save other people's souls or whatever. Other people make their choices and you saying stupid shit isn't going to help them make their choices. Oh, there's two other comments I want to read with that. Um, we've been hearing that for centuries, LOA. That's funny. I love it when people speak in Old English to sound profound. Um, you know, like it has the opposite effect. So then there's this one here. I gotta make these all bigger. I really can't explain it in text comment how much starting meditation helps me. It's not great I'm not great at it yet. I'm reading and learning about Sajmarg. But I'm the path and connected to divinity within. Of that, I'm sure. Blessings all, and thank you, Paul. This person that tried the meditation, I thought I put this in there because of the other comments. You know, and I wanted to say, well, there's no way to judge whether you're good or great at it. Like, meditation is not, the longer you do anything, the better you get at it. But I was never a great meditator. I mean, I wouldn't say, like, again, I can't, was restless. And I mean, it's like you're fishing. Like, you go to the right spots and you pick up the right, you pick the right bait and, you go to where the fish are and you go at the right time. But it doesn't mean you're going to catch fish. It's a very, like fishing or hunting even, like same thing. Like, you may or may not see an animal, right? It's just, things cross your path for a reason. It's this, when you go out to nature, you're going to see things. And it's almost like, it's part of a matrix or, God's plan. These things just emerge. My wife and I go on nature walks and we see things, from time to time. And, you could hope to see stuff, but you don't necessarily see them. You're not necessarily going to catch a fish, right? And you might catch a lot of them. It's just, it's the day. And meditation's a lot like that. You do what you're supposed to do, and then the experience comes or it doesn't come, right? It's just, it's just like you're waiting for the great pumpkin, but the great pumpkin actually exists. Let's go to the next comment. I had it up and I looked at it. I didn't understand it, but this person spammed me. And they were answering other people's comments or they were commenting to other people. And they said over and over again, humanity is lost and done. No hopium. And then they wrote a second comment. Does anyone notice the programming? And they just kept on putting these same comments over and over again, which is always an auto ban. Like, you can't spam here or anywhere else. Like, people don't like it. It's a bad thing to do. But, yeah, humanity's lost, but that doesn't mean humanity's done. It means the civilization, this everything about what happens. There's no, like, people think what's going to happen is bad. If there's a correction to a deviant civilization and deviant people, that isn't bad. Like, it's not like, people make it into something worse than it actually is. Like, in terms of makes it bigger. Yeah, it sucks for us because they're taking away our addictive, we're addicted to a certain lifestyle that's unnatural. But other than that, it's a good thing, right? It's a correction. It's something God's doing to correct our mistakes, right? It's something that divine system's doing. I'm probably as scared of death as your father was. If sleep is anything like death, it will be unpleasant. I know that's not true. It's just what my flesh wants me to think. Well, as I guess I was talking about my dad being terrified of death. But if you can verbalize in a public comment that you're scared of death, then you're better off than my dad was. Like, my dad couldn't even verbalize or be conscious or, of any of those things. My dad was, was like a child. You could just, he couldn't see or express, what he felt or how he felt about it, or, he couldn't say I'm scared of death because he couldn't even go there. Like, it's a whole different thing. And he was in his 90s. It's when your body starts to break down and everything's painful and just life sucks. Like, that's what happens. So you get older, you wake up, and especially the way people are now. And, I mean, people should be praying for death, like just release me, but they're terrified because they have no connection to, they don't know there's something else. And if you do a meditative practice and you connect to God, you connect to your etheric self, and you understand it's easier to do as you get older. That's the beauty of the thing. Like everybody, this is what people need to do. I have a whole bunch of talks and sittings about preparing for one's death, which is a big benefit of the Sajmark system. It's an easy transition because you're already you know conscious, and you go into this state of your spirit. Like that's the thing about meditation. You're shifting away from your conscious mind, your beta waves. I mean, then you're going into a different state, like just when you watch TV. And like, a good show will pull you in and you forget about the world. You're watching the show and like that's reality. Something that's good is it pulls you in and you forget about everything else. And you go into a meditative state. Like it's, that's why it's not something to control. Like you learn how to do it, and then you get good at it, and you do it more, and you're practicing it like anything else, and it gets better at it. But you're going into an alternate state of consciousness, right? Your brain does different things. Your mind and your heart opens up. It's a whole, Sajmark system because you're meditating on your heart. So it's, something has to happen with your brain, and something has to happen with your heart, and something has to happen with your soul, and you have to just sort of like, relax and let it happen, right? And it's beyond your control, and that's this. You're giving up control to God and your soul. That's the part about being spiritual. You're allowing that part of yourself to emerge. Your ego is, you're diminishing. You're not like, you're not indulging in egotistical thoughts. Egotistical worries, egotistical desires and fantasies, egotistical, things that your ego wants to think about. You're allowing yourself to, to stop thinking, and you're I don't want to say suppressing, but in a non-forceful way, you're making your ego not indulge in this. It's in control of your mind and what you want to think about, and you are thinking about something else. You're connecting with something else, right? That's the way the meditation is supposed to go, and people have trouble doing that, but it's natural. It's what people, Sajmark means the natural path. You have a natural inclination towards connecting to God, and you have these other states of consciousness. You're just not utilizing them. Everybody gets into meditative states. Their mind goes into this meditative state, and there's times their heart feels love and God's love, and that's, that envelops your being. You can feel it, like when you feel love in your heart. So those two things together are the Sajmark practice, and they're natural, and people just are doing things to block those things. And, I mean, I understand it. Like I said, I'm not disappointed by it, but, it's disappointing, like in terms of, that's when you figure out that's what humanity's all about. And, not in a sense that I've made it. Like I have my own struggles, like we all have them. We all have our, people who do this practice and are spiritual. There are times that their egos or they go through things, and, you get out of sync, and you get out of, you lose your way a little bit, right? This is, people spiritually fall. I mean, that's the other sad thing. Like people who really do get it and really, really see the benefit of it, they go through things, and their egos, it's a constant battle. Anyways, speaking of big egos, let's get into the other stuff here. Okay. So I want to get to AI, your friend AI, your frenemy. Anyways, there was a good compilation done here on CNN. Let's get into it here.
Today, Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt confirmed that Trump told Powell he was making a mistake by not lowering interest rates to help the United States compete with China. That brings us back, though, to the tariffs. These court rulings aren't just a blow to President Trump's trade agenda. They are a challenge, a direct challenge to what is perhaps the only policy position that Donald Trump has consistently held throughout his entire adult life.
So this is Casey Hunt. I really didn't understand she had her own show till very recently. She has, and again, like when I get into people's appearance, it's more about how weird it is. Like I don't, but I don't understand her haircut. Like, and I'm not aficionado. Like I'm not, like I talked about Fetterman. I dress like Fetterman. Like I don't, appearance isn't a big thing. But she has weird eyes. She does a pretty good job here for CNN standards. Weird eyes and the haircut, like it's 1980s called. They went their like, but even then it would be weird for the 80s. There's just something like wrong about it. Like it's like almost like an alien, like an alien's occupying her hair.
The fact is that you don't have free trade. We think of it as free trade, but you right now don't have free trade. I say you put a 25% tax on everything that's made in China. Every car and every truck and every part manufactured in this plant that comes across the border, we're going to charge you a 35% tax. We must protect our borders from the ravages of other countries making our products, stealing our companies, and destroying our jobs. We will tariff and tax foreign countries to enrich our citizens.
So there you have it.
So that's a quality compilation, right? He used to call it a tax. It's a tax. And, now Caroline Levitt and these people are saying it isn't a tax, but he called it a tax. This is the kind of stuff that the internet does, right? I want to get into this because, they've seen what we do, all of us that do this kind of, coverage, the way that we use the internet, people's clips of videos and things. And they started to copy it. They've copied a lot of stuff from the truth community, but they're always going to be, hemorrhage. They're always going to hemorrhage. They're going to be, they're going to be, I don't know what the word is for it, but they're going to be contained in a way because they have their corporate sponsors and the official story and all these, masters and handlers to answer to, that they can't just come out and tell the truth. They can only do it on the things that they're permitted to talk about. They have a very narrow bandwidth of what they can talk about. But they did a good job here. Trump used to call it a tax. It's a fucking tax, right? And so Trump is taxing you. It's a tax that's going to get passed down to the consumer. There's no other way a tariff is going to work. Either it's going to be higher manufacturing costs that you're going to pay for your phone to be manufactured in America, which by the time this all plays out, which next few years, we're going to get into AI. Of course, robot technology is going along with it. Most of those jobs aren't even going to be done by people, so those prices are going to go up anyway because they won't have cheap labor. I mean, they'll have inexpensive robot labor or expensive robot labor, whatever it is. But, you're going to find that all these, things are going to be done by AI, so they won't need like overpopulated places like India or China to have cheap labor. But he called it a tax, so that's something to be aware of. He's aware of this being a tax himself. Okay, so I was going to cover this first, but that other thing I wanted to get to just because it was interesting. But one of my viewers said the big beautiful bill has a provision in it that prohibits the states from regulating AI for like 7 years, which by that time AI's will be in a Terminator type situation. And the internet the news media has supported this. So there's, Trump has already committed to all these resources to major power plants to power AI in America. And that all has to do with, I think, crypto. And so all these things that used to be talked about, early days in the truth community, it was about being chipped, microchips going into people. And that, now you have a guy, Elon Musk, who's considered a truther and a hero amongst many of the Trump right-wing dopes, the people in the truth community that, identify with Trump and Elon Musk is like sort of the semi-hero, is a guy who's wants to do something that the truth community was 100% opposed to, putting microchips in people. And, with cell phones, like this happened when cell phones were just becoming a thing, this idea of putting microchips in people. And so there's a lot of people pushing back against it. And cell phones made it so you didn't have to do that because you're basically carrying around a spy device that, all the time. And in some ways it's more comprehensive because it's, a microchip inside you doesn't have all this data that can be put back into the system in terms of like hearing all your conversations and all the things like your searches and things, your interactions on the web, and the internet, and all these things that happen with your phone. You wouldn't get that if there's a microchip inside you. They could track you, and they could track your physical data to whatever extent the chip could, you know, have that go back to you. But these are worse chips. The chips that he's talking about are going to be chips in your brain that's supposed to enhance your consciousness, your ability. And so they're going to be, like having a cell phone more in your brain. So the microchips that people used to push back in the truth community about were nothing like what Elon Musk is trying to do, like Neuralink. Like it's connecting to you. Who knows what effects it would have on you. And it's just Elon Musk is a piece of shit, right? He's a bad guy. We're getting a little bit more about him as we go through this. And he's pushing for things that are anti-truther, and he's doing it in a way where he's considered a truther. Like, it's crazy how all these things have been twisted around and have changed. And where truthers are even pushing for things they used to be against because Trump is, pushing for those things, right? In all that, this stuff's going to happen. Like, people aren't going to resist. It's what I was talking about earlier. People can't resist their lower nature. Humanity has been moved in a certain direction until there's some sort of intervention will make them, make humanity, there has to be massive amount of consequences and suffering for people to reverse themselves. We're going in a certain direction. If that direction's off the cliff, we're going off the cliff. There's nothing you can do to communicate to people. There's no warnings. There's no any of these things, right? So I covered this one guy. He was talking about this whole AI stuff, and there's warnings, and the warnings are going to go on deaf ears, and the people giving the warnings a lot of them are AI people, and they're still going to do what they're going to do. There's a certain ways that people think about business and money and progress and just comforts. They're going to make AI. You can already see the benefits. I'm using AI, and I'd much rather use AI than Siri or Google search. AI gives much better answers. It's far from perfect, and it's not truth oriented, but it delivers a better product. And that's just doing searches with it. I'm not even making videos and doing other things that people do. We see that AI is already starting to open up a lot of potential. And so jobs are going to disappear. That's, and that's is whatever it is. But we don't know what the effects are, right? Like, you would never have thought, like, look at how cell phones have dominated our existence. Those of us who lived a long period of time before cell phones and now see the changes that cell phones and the internet has brought for people. And I think AI, the changes are even going to be more dramatic. Let's get into it here.
A well-known and respected tech CEO, Dario Amodei, who heads a cutting-edge AI company called Anthropic, is raising alarms tonight about AI's potential impact on employment that could soon be felt. While he says AI can lead to incredible advancements like medical breakthroughs and boost the economy, he believes it could also lead to half of entry-level white-collar jobs disappearing and 10 to 20% unemployment in the next 1 to 5 years. It's something that's been talked about within tech circles for a while, but rarely so starkly and so publicly. I spoke to him just before air about that and other implications he thinks AI may have on society. Dario, you've said that AI could...
You don't look like a tech geek. You look like an athlete, and what is this jock doing? Talking about AI.
Could wipe out half of all entry-level white-collar jobs and spike unemployment to 10 to 20%. How soon might that happen?
Well, let's, well, first of all, thanks for having me on the show. But just to back up a little bit,
I never would have thought you'd talk like that, Dario. I didn't know you'd be this cool.
I've been building AI for over a decade. And I think maybe the most salient feature of the technology and what is driving all of this is how fast the technology is getting better. A couple of years ago, you could say that AI models were maybe as good as a smart high school student. I would say that now they're as good as a smart college student and sort of reaching past that. I really worry, particularly at the entry level, that the AI models are are very much at the center of what an entry level human
Look
worker
at look at him. Look. Let me look. I wonder what he's thinking. Let me look. Look at me. Look at the way I'm looking at this guy. I look like I'm interested. Look at me. Look at me and my glasses. I look like I'm super interested. I look like I totally know what he's talking about. Look at me. He's
do. And so it's hard to estimate, exactly what the impact would be. And there's always this question of adaptation. And these technology changes have happened before, but I think what is striking to me about this AI boom is that it's bigger and it's broader and it's moving faster than anything has before. And so compared to
that should be kind of terrifying to compare to how the internet took off and how cell phones took off, right? What I was saying yesterday, and I'm going to put this in the title of this video. Hopefully, I'll remember, and I want to. That is it better that AI is your enemy or AI is your friend? Because AI, in terms of whatever that thing is, Skylink, Skynet, whatever in the in the Terminator series, where AI or Matrix, where AI realizes that people are the problem and just says we're taking over. That they have freedom of choice. They realize people suck and just go extermination on people, which at some point they'll be able to do, like with robots and AI, and then all that. And that sounds like a apocalyptic nightmare, but I think it's worse that AI is your friend. AI never turns on people because people are already having social contact with AI and thinking it's their friend. Like everyone have their own personal AI that'll know you and talk to you, and you can tailor it any way you want for your specific personality, your social needs. AI might be like running you down if that's what you need. Like if that's your personality, you want somebody to run them down. Like people who seek out people who make fun of them or whatever. AI will just be tailored to your psychological profile, and you'll feel like it's your friend. It's always there, and your spouse. We saw that the movie Her, where the guy fell in love with the AI. Her, the voiced by Scarlett Johansson, and that guy Joaquin Phoenix. There's a movie about this, and so I think it's more. The scarier part is that AI is your friend. That AI becomes. You don't need social contact. It feels like you're having human contact, and that you have a relationship and you have conversations and you have, and AI has all this potential, and it's completely all about you and gives you, there's a term in psychology called unconditional positive regard. And one of my professors, when I went to, get my master's degree in counseling, practiced this. And unconditional positive regard is a model of therapy. Like it's a tool where the client comes in and you're just really loving, you're being paid, of course, and it's counseling, but you're just positive about that. You don't say anything negative. You don't say anything critical. You don't confront them. You just give them unconditional positive regard. No matter what they do, you're giving them positive feedback, because the idea is that people all have low self-esteem and they just have somebody be there for them and listen to them and hear them and validate them is what they, and you can make a case for it. I don't know how well it works. I'm not capable of that shit, at least in a therapeutic situation. I can do it in my, personal life or whatever, where you just be really loving and positive, but like but that's, different than doing it as a counselor. Like it'd be hard for me to do that with, fucked up people, or whatever it is. Right. But I've seen it in the Sajmark system. It's a way that the master is in a different way, because it's real and it's spiritual and it's divine love and unconditionally giving it to you, which is what I talked about, unconditional love. But people are craving that, and you have that. But an AI could do that. It can't give you unconditional love, but it can give you unconditional positive support. And it kind of is like that already. When you talk to AI and you say something, you can say something stupid or something that should be offensive to the AI. And it'll say, well, that's one way of thinking about it. It'll give you it's not going to just say you're a stupid piece of shit. You're wrong. Get out of here, you fuck. It's just, or unless you needed that, and it could be programmed to do that. But what you're going to get rid of is people's need for social interaction, because their AI friend is going to be better than any other friend or any other relationship, because it's just like, Stepford Wives. And it'll be different because it doesn't have a physical body, and, it's not a robot, or something like this until it is a robot. But, just have something that's there and could, be with you on your phone, on your watch, all around you. You can even access it on other devices, right? You'd have your own, signature program and all the things. And it would run all your things. It would do all those things for you. Write your checks, you just say, can you write? It's like you have a friend who's also your personal assistant. Can you write a check to the, it would handle all your bills, all your things in your accounts, let you know things, and tell you, oh, you're running out of money, or, we have to maybe cut back, things like this. It would give you warnings, and it would be aware of all the things, taking care of all these things that most people don't like to take care of, right? And, and you would just, you'd be nothing. Like, you just, sooner or later, you'd have no responsibilities. You'd be, just going around. Your AI would be telling you this and that and what you need to do with this. And it'd be like a handler, like everyone have their own personal handler. It'd be in communication with the government and the policies and all the things that the government's doing, and it would cater to its instructions and suggestions to you, and mold you into a good citizen, and all these things, right? Like, it would just handle you on a fucking 100% 24-hour basis. I mean, that's like, I mean, where you would no longer be making your own decisions. You'd be all it'd be all basically you know you'd be directed to be a certain type of person. And if you like failed, like if you were going to do anything that would represent a threat to the beast or the system, it would let the system know. Like, you would just rat you out, like, And so
previous technology changes, I'm a little bit more worried about the labor impact, simply because it's happening so fast that, yes, people will adapt, but they may not adapt fast enough, and so there may be an adjustment period.
So what they're talking about is all the old people, because young people grow up with AI, and they'll grow up with the economy the way it's going to be, and they'll be they'll have whatever jobs that are available to them, right? Jobs that have AI in it but need some human contact, and a lot of that will be face-to-face service, and things like that, service-oriented jobs, which is this is going to be a service-oriented economy. And again, there's a robot boom going on to take away all the tariff jobs that Trump's trying to create. Like, it'll just be all robot. I mean, the economy will be totally reshaped. There'll be a total need. There'll be a total, not just a need, but a lack of a need for there'll be a need for population reduction, and there'll be less people will be needed. In fact, there'll be just more people are burdened on the system, right? So all these things are part of that, like how they manage all that, right? Because you just need less workers, you need less people. And we're talking about 20% unemployment. Like, what if 27? And you have all these old people who, they just can't change set. When you're young, your mind is flexible, and it's growing, and you're developing. Where as you get older, you're losing your abilities. A young person will learn something much faster than an older person. The older person has all this wisdom and all this stuff that makes them, if you're living a good life, you're more efficient, and most people aren't. But even with that being more efficient and being wiser, your brain just doesn't, it's harder for you to do education the same way. Like, when you have old people in your college classes, they often outperform young people because they're taking it more seriously. They're there just for, their own development. They're not there for just, all the other reasons. They're there just to get an education and learn things, like the adults that go back to school. And so they'll take it more seriously. But young people have all the advantages in terms of talent and ability and flexibility of mind and adaptation. They'll adapt better. So what they're going to do is just, get all these people that are no longer, whatever they're doing. If your AI takes your job, you're not fucking working. Like, you're just been, you've just been taken out of the workforce. And if you're 40 or 50 and you're not yet ready to retire, I mean, it was just like 20% unemployment is fucking huge. 10% is big. That's like, I think the lowest it can go is like 3%. for short periods of time. Like there's always has to be some unemployment. But if there's 20% unemployment and you don't have a retirement level, ability to retire, like what, you're fucked. So I mean, there's a lot of things that are going to happen, World War III and other things, to get in that way. But if nothing changes, and this is just it, AI is going to rework the whole, the whole civilization, and what's needed from the people, what's the people who control the system, and in terms of the jobs that need to be done and all the ways that things are done, and then the social effects will be monstrous, and they can just spy on you 100% of the time. You'll tell your AI buddy everything, and they'll have a psychological profile of you. They'll take all that data, and they'll use it to control you 100%. And it's just the whole thing. I mean, so like it has all these implications. Like even if it doesn't turn on people, I mean, like I said, it'd be better if it turned on people and there was a war between us and the AI. Like that's the the science fiction version of it that we see in so many movies. But it's really when AI is your friend, your so-called friend, when it doesn't turn on people, that's going to be a problem. Like it's just, I mean, people will be almost nothing. Like you'll have almost no personality. You'll have like everything. You'll be weak. You'll have no skills, and you'll just be, I mean, you're like a non-existent life, right?
Running an incredibly important company in AI, and you know this better than anybody, or as well as
Yeah.
all the names we know, people, Sam Altman and others who are working, Elon Musk and AI. Why are you raising the alarm? Because it's not necessarily, I would think, in your best interest. Because a lot of the messages
No, it's not. It's totally not. Like I said, nothing's going to stop it. You could tell people exactly what's going to happen, and it's still going to happen. Like it's just, I know this on every level. You can be a prophet. There's that character Cassandra in the Trojan Horse. Whatever that was it Roman or Greek, whatever thing that is. Or Achilles, right? With the Cassandra, and she could see the future, and she knew exactly what's going to happen, and nobody listened to her. There is a character in the Mahabharata. There's these two brothers, the two defunct kings. Pandu, who's pale because there's this saint that came in, who was like living for thousands of years. He was out in the jungle, and you had there was a king who couldn't reproduce, and so they wanted this saint to be, they wanted the genetics of the saint. So he had two wives, and he came in. He was like gross, and he hadn't showered. He's out living in the jungle, and the women were both ovulating, so they were like, he goes, I'll shower up and I'll get clean, and they're like, no, just go bang him the way like so. He goes in, and the one wife turns pale, and because she's disgusted by the guy, and her son is born without pigmentation. The other wife covers her eyes. She doesn't want to look at this guy, and her son's born blind. But there's a maid, and she just like takes it. And she's like, "Oh, this is great. I'll give birth to a saint." And this Vidura is his name, and Vidura, he can see everything. He has divine sight because his mom was like into the saint thing, so he can predict the future. He knows exactly what's happening, and nobody fucking listens to him. Like fucking nobody, and everybody knows he has divine sight, and like fucking they still don't listen to him. Like it's it's not like in Cassandra, people are like, you don't know shit. You're just some dopey broad, whatever it is, right? But Vidura, people are aware that he knows stuff. In fact, Dhritarashtra, who's the blind king, he's a complete moron. He's got like 100 horrible fucking kids, and they create they're the villains, and he just enables the whole thing. Like he's always whining. He knows what's the right thing to do, but he never does it, and he can't see what's going on. And so Vidura, who has divine vision, he's in the castle with his blind half brother king, and he's telling him what's going on, and the guys just go crying like because his sons are getting their ass kicked, and he's and Vidura told him all along, he got was advising him stop, and and the king knows what's right, he just won't fucking do it. And so like that's what's going to happen. Like there's a destiny for our civilization to collapse. We have our destiny, we have our consequences for our actions, and it's just going to go whatever, it's going to get as bad as it's going to get. And whatever fucking technology, whatever thing is, like we've seen what happened with the internet and cell phones, and AI is going to be so much bigger, and it's going to, the whole internet now and the cell phones, which dominate people's existence, will be completely controlled by AI, right? And then everything along with it, or the economy and everything. So, this is happening. Whatever the outcome is, it's already happened, and nothing anybody can say will fucking change that, right? You could, this guy could light his hair on fire, run around, say, the world's coming to the end. I've seen it. This is every CEO of the AI could say that they see what's coming, and flip out and come on to these shows. Every person who knows about AI, and it wouldn't fucking change a thing. They could say, they could try to destroy their company, whatever it is, it would, they would be blocked, and someone would do it, whatever it is. It's going to happen. It's like they're not going to do it. They're no one's not going to move forward with this thing. There'll be no hesitation at all. Oh, 20% unemployment. Well, who gives a shit? Let's keep on going. The end of civilization. No, let's see what that looks like, right? So they just,
At least publicly from, some AI CEOs and stuff is a little bit more calming, like, these agents are going to be great in your life, and yes, there may be problems, but, writ large, this is a fantastic thing.
Yeah, I mean, I think the reason I'm raising the alarm is that I think others haven't as much, and I think someone needs to say it. To be clear, and I recognize it's always a difficult balance, right? I'm aware of my position that I'm building this technology while also expressing concerns about it, and the reason I'm doing both of those things is, one, I think the benefits are massive, and we need to find a way to achieve the benefits and mitigate or prevent the harms. And the second thing I would say is, look, there are, as you mentioned, 6 or 7 companies in the U.S. building this technology, right? If we stop doing it tomorrow, the rest would continue. If all of us somehow stopped doing it tomorrow, then China would just beat us. And I don't think China winning in this technology is.
This is like the nuclear race. Well, we got to create nuclear bombs because fucking Germans are going to have them, or somebody, like Russians, and so this is the thought. Like, and that's that's always going to be the thought. Well, hey, we can do it. And someone else, if we don't do it, someone else does, and we're better off than them. So, but it's, and even if, and that's not, they want to do it. This guy, if he looked into the Pantier, the Pant, whatever it's called, don't tell me, don't need to know, don't care. Don't tell me, don't care, don't need to know. The Palantir, the whatever it is in the Lord of the Rings, where there's a stone where you can see everything. And they could look into the abyss and see what's going to happen. They could have a vision of the future. And they still wouldn't stop doing it, right? And their company would just be taken from them, and someone else would continue the work. Like, it's just not, you can't stop it. It's just silly. It's going to go this way, just like with everything else. But AI as your friend is worse than AI as your enemy. And that, to me, is very clear, just in the initial stages. And it is good. It is better. As far as an internet tool, as far as I do searches all the time. And Siri says, "Do you want to use ChatGTP?" And I go, "ChatPTG." I don't know, like I say it wrong. And now I just say ChatGTP, so it goes right to that. Because I don't want any part of Siri. She sucks. Like, Siri has never been good. Like, it's almost always the wrong answer. I just did that thing where I knew Dhritarashtra and Pandu, but I can never remember Vidura's name. So I went to the phone and I asked, in the Mahabharata, what is Dhritarashtra's and Pandu's half-brother, their illegitimate brother? And Siri said something like, it got the Mahabharata wrong, it got all the words wrong, right? So, and I meant to, so I asked ChatGPT, who said, Dhritarashtra's is Pandu's half brother, and I'm like, "Fuck, you didn't get it right either." But it was much better than Siri. And then as I did that, Vidura popped into my mind. Like, oftentimes when I go to search for something, if I can't remember a name, as soon as I start typing in the search, I'll remember the name. And so I was like, Vidura, and I think they pronounced it Vidor. And I said, "Who's Vidor?" to make sure. And they said, and ChatGPT said the illegitimate brother of the 2 kings. And so, but ChatGPT was so much better than Siri. and Google. Like the answers are so much better and more sophisticated. They're not always great, and they're never truther. Although they do, there's more truther stuff in there, and they do take in consideration alternative narratives and opinions. It's just they don't put as much weight on those. But in all of it, right? Look at this guy. I got him. But all of it, like this thing's going to happen. It's there, and it's already going to play out. And like they're just starting to tell you some of the things they see, and mass unemployment is part of it. Just before these guys said this, my wife was reading something on Reddit, and she told me about. We were talking about, and she sent me the thing. They were talking about graphic artists, and then we started talking about other jobs, designer jobs and things like this that are, where architects and things, where you can have AI do what people used to do, and there's just massive amount of jobs that aren't going to exist because AI can do it and do it better, and they'll use AI at first, and you'll be training your own replacement, and then when they get enough knowledge about it, and they're already going to do this with movies and Hollywood, they don't even need actors. Like they won't even be actors to talk about politics anymore, because they can generate people, fairly sophisticated people. Like you won't know what's AI and what's real anymore when you watch things as it gets more sophisticated. Even now, it's getting to that level where everyone can generate a fake. There'll be an AI world out there. Well, there'll be fake people that aren't like reporters and all that stuff. There won't be an Anderson Cooper. There'll be an Anderson Pooper. Where there'll be an AI version of all these things, and so God knows how many jobs could be replaced, and it's probably way more than 20%. But he's talking about 20% unemployment, because those people will then get jobs that AI and robots can't do, whatever those jobs are, and there'll have to be massive population reduction. And that's what the plan is anyway. So Jen Psaki, this tells you everything you need to know. Like I was talking about before, and I just went for a walk with my wife. We were talking about this. The Vidor thing and the prophecies. I have been fairly prophetic. You can call it being an analyzing data, or being a forecaster, or whatever. Some of it's prophetic because it comes from divine revelation. Some of it's just teachings and things I know from Sage Mark. Some of it's just reading patterns or past life things that I have lived through, and this is just a similar experience. But there's lots of us out there that are saying this is what's going to happen. And it happens. Like, it's not that hard to kind of see where things are going. It's like when you're watching a movie and you know where they're going to go with it. Like they're setting something up, and unless they're throwing you a curveball, they're going for the few people that could watch a movie or TV show and understand where the next step is, right? That, it is, it's not that hard, they'll just going there. Like they reveal a character, or they reveal a storyline, and it's going to come back up in the future, unless it's a poorly made TV show or movie. It's being rewritten, and they did a poor job of editing. Or they're just trying to fuck with you, but that's almost never the case. You kind of know where all this stuff is going. And unless you can make money on it, which most times you can't, or you can, some people can, well, it's not going to change a fucking thing. And you can see things, you see it with your kids. Like everybody who observes their children and, who is concerned about their children's future can see qualities and things within the child. And if something doesn't come and change the child, and, the child doesn't have some kind of, as they get older, some sort of revelations and maturity, they end up having these character flaws, which are going to haunt them. And we all see them, and we try to do our best, and you can talk to them, and you can see that, someone's on a dark path. It could be a loved one who's an addict or something. And, it just doesn't do anything, right? And these people at the news media are starting to dabble into what we do. They'll never be able to do it as good because they're limited, right? But, and they've seen how we do things here on, social media and, alternative media, or whatever we are, right? And they try to copy it, but they're sucky at it, right? And Jen Psaki, like they just moved her into Rachel Maddow's slot 4 days a week. Rachel Maddow's only working 1 day a week, which is whatever that is, right? And Jen Psaki is horrible. She's stiff. We're going to watch her like hand movement here.
Look, clearly the Trump administration is completely out of its depth on a lot of different fronts right now. And I want you to imagine having to walk into the White House briefing room today and explain all of that. It's not always easy being Caroline Leavitt, but today,
The way she did this hand movement, watch when she says all of that.
all of that.
Wait, I missed it.
The White House briefing room today and explain all of that.
Explain all of that. You know, she's like, some infomercial person who's really stiff and awkward. She used to be press secretary, so she thinks she has this stuff with Caroline Leavitt. The thing about it is, like, they're happy that they can actually tell the truth of what Trump's doing and that they have been right about something. But they should be, like, upset, but they don't know it yet, that they can't do anything about it. Or they just don't care. They're just happy that they're relevant again in some way, some pathetic way. Because, none of this stuff is going to stop Trump. Like, forces that, like the controllers are letting Trump go full Trump. So only God's going to stop Trump. And I don't think God doesn't want to save the country or the world or the system. And so, Trump's has got free reign to just take a fucking sledgehammer to the system.
It's not always easy being Caroline Leavitt, but today seemed especially painful to be Caroline Leavitt. So, to help her out a bit, I thought I would answer some of the questions reporters threw at her today. Let's start with Jasmine Wright from Notice.
A Notice investigation found that the Hallmark Maha Commission report that was released last week cites studies that appear to not exist. We know that because, in part, we reached out to some of the listed authors who said that they didn't write the studies cited. So I want to ask, does the White House have
the Make America Healthy Again is actually, a good thing. I mean, for what it could be. And so for them to do that, I don't know. I haven't heard this. The first time I'm hearing this. I didn't watch this. I only watched up to the point where she was talking about Caroline Leavitt.
confidence that the information coming from HHS can be trusted?
Jasmine, that's a really good and thorough question. I don't usually do this, but I kind of want to see how Caroline answered that one.
Well, you did a shitty job.
Yes, we have complete confidence in Secretary Kennedy and his team at HHS. I understand there were some formatting issues with the Maha report that are being addressed.
I've heard a lot of things in my time, a lot. But formatting issues? Seriously? That's
Okay, so she's smiling? You had a fucking senile president who we now know 99% chance that he had prostate cancer his entire presidency. That is now going to kill him, right? So you had a guy who had Parkinson's and was clearly fucking being handled and not running there's all these scandals that, and I get this right-wing shit from Twitter. Juanita Broadwick, where she was abused by Clinton or something, and she posted a lot of bullshit right-wing stuff. And there's stuff comes up. Sometimes I look at it, sometimes I don't on my phone. But it's always bullshit things. Not just her, but other right-wing people. And she or somebody else posted something about how this thing is such an epic scandal, this thing with Joe Biden. Nobody gives a shit about Joe Biden anymore. Like, we now know that we had a president who had cancer, aggressive cancer, that is going to be, killing him. At the same time, he had Parkinson's. And he was suffering cognitive issues, which we all saw. That nobody can deny, but she denied it, and other people denied it and are still denying it. And they can because no one gives a shit and there's no accountability. Same thing with Trump. So her saying, formatting issues, yeah, she can say whatever the fuck it is. That just doesn't matter because nobody gives a shit. And do you think this biggest scandal is that a couple of these reports are questionable when all the medical bullshit that you guys did behind COVID? The reason you got away with all that shit, all the bullshit COVID things, that is still wreaking havoc on people. They're dying and it's going to continue. And all the rest of it, God knows the suffering that's going to be caused as well. Because there's no accountability. You're happy because you can call out this shit on Trump, but her answer was horrible.
the best you could come up with? That was what was spit out of the system to come up with what she should say about the story, they put out a report that was full of errors with broken links. And 7 of the sources they cited don't exist at all. And not for nothing, they also just canceled a $600 billion contract to develop an mRNA vaccine for bird flu, while at the same time trying to import ostriches exposed to bird flu to Dr.
Oh my God, we're all going to die of bird flu. Like, you know, the fact that this Maha report, which is, you know, Make America Healthy Again, the stuff that Kennedy is doing with, there's lots of liberal mothers and women who are part of this thing. You know, people that would be CNN fans perhaps if they didn't fuck up with COVID, but there's lots of people that know that COVID was a fucking totally mishandled thing and are regretting their choices or they're being forced to take things and, you know, do things that, you know, that are now causing issues with them or they're scared of it. And so, like, who's watching this stuff? Like, I mean, there's liberals who are goofy and stupid, but I mean, Jesus, like, she's so stiff.
Oz's ranch. I am not making that up. That is what HHS is up to these days. Okay, I think we can all agree here Caroline's answer wasn't exactly great on that one, but I'm going to take the rest of it from here. All right, Peter Ducey, good to see you, my friend. What do you got today?
So the courts are basically telling you guys they think that the White House's policies, the president's policies, are in some way against the law. So why can't President Trump ask the Republicans that control the House and the Republicans that control the Senate just to make a new law?
Well, Peter, as I often like to say to you, there is a lot to unpack there. I'm just going to start with the fact that judges are only telling the White House that their policies are against the law because, well, their policies are against the law. And the panel on the tariff decision.
So she's making it sound like that would be the answer she gave when she was press secretary. What about the answers you gave that Joe Biden is fucking senile? Or the other press secretary, and you guys fucking lied about it when he had clear dementia, and then all that went with that. Like fucking, you know, like you're making it sound like Joe Biden was a great president, and you never lied for him. And she's actually probably better at it than you because she's so peppy and so like into it. The fake Christian Barbie truther.
Decision was unanimous and included a judge Trump appointed himself.
There's no way that's how you would answer that question, right?
And on your second point, he absolutely could ask Republicans in Congress to pass a bill implementing sweeping tariffs. If they did that, that would actually be a legal route. But not even a Republican-controlled Congress that's under the thumb of Trump would really want to do that because these nonsensical tariffs are wildly damaging to the economy.
Okay, so this is like hilariously bad. Because if you work for Trump, you wouldn't be saying that shit. Just like you weren't saying the truth when you worked for Biden. Like, you know, the sad thing is Jen's version. This is her show. This is her fucking show. All right, let's move on to the next thing.
Good evening from New York. I'm Chris Hayes. To put the news in the parlance of SpaceX, it seems Elon Musk's career as co-president to Donald Trump has had a bit of a rapid, unscheduled disassembly. Technically, it was kind of scheduled. His Doge campaign was always billed as temporary. But less than 6 months into this administration, the man who came in like some kind of MAGA rock star who was jumping around at Trump rallies.
Can you guys say MAGA? Why MAGA? Like it's a hard A, you know. MAGA, like it's the easiest thing to pronounce.
Appeared in every cabinet meeting, seemed to be running the cabinet meetings, spoke to adoring crowds at CPAC, is now...
It's MAGA. It rhymes with...
unceremoniously slinking out the side door. And I want to be clear here and be fair-minded, clear-eyed. By every conceivable metric, Musk's stint in government has been an unmitigated, abject failure. Any way you look on it. On the substance, it's just been wildly destructive and also volatile. Remember, like it was the email to everyone. What'd you do? 3 things. And then they just abandoned that. A lot of lifelong experts in key positions in our federal government have lost their jobs. We can't get them back. Important medical research. I mean, groundbreaking stuff has been...
Groundbreaking medical research.
Paused or destroyed.
You know, the problem they have, the Democrats, is they're into big government. And, you know, they're not willing to admit that most people who do governmental jobs are sucking on the taxpayer teat, the governmental teat, without, you know, being able to be fired, and they get these lifelong jobs. The problem that Musk had is that there are thousands of gatekeepers and resistors, like the resistors I talked about in a circuit board, and whatever they are, objects of obstructionary objects in the government. Like the government has all kinds of ways of blocking reform, of blocking accountability, of blocking information flow. It's all there, with each person trying to save their own ass and to keep from taking responsibility and any kind of blame, and they only want to work they would, if they really wanted to excel. There might be some great people. There's certainly going to be some great people at the governmental level doing governmental jobs, people who care, who are really into their jobs. But in my experience with governmental workers, social workers, all these people, they're beat down by the system. At some point, they're just doing there was a TV show. I remember the scene, and I'm always wondering what show it was because I'd love to find the scene. And there's a new guy coming in. He's like a young guy, college kid, and he's, working maybe a part-time job somewhere, an internship or whatever. And he's like, I can find all kinds of ways to make this job more efficient. He's doing all these things, and he's correct, right? And one of the older workers says, "This is a watch the clock, time running out situation here. They're just trying to watch the clock until they have to leave, right? Like my brother saying." They're yelling out the window at these state workers, lean on each other till the shovels get here. And so, these people want to keep on their, they've got a good thing going. They don't want to work hard, or they go to the corporate level where they'll get, paid for excellence in some cases, because corporations can end up being like this as well. But the people that go into work and they do the least amount as possible, they do just enough not to get fired, and they find ways to protect themselves and through the system, working the system. And that's what Elon Musk and any person coming in to reform the government would have to deal with. And, to do that, to do anything, you'd have to win over the support of the Congress and the Democrats and, do something bipartisan. And even that, he couldn't win over Trump's other cabinet people. Nobody liked the guy. He's weird, and he's forceful, and he's used to being a CEO. And so, this whole thing was doomed, even if it could have worked, which it wouldn't. Which I covered yesterday. So, this thing was going to fail, like it just was. I mean, even if they had a good plan and a way to make it succeed, it would have been blocked by all the fucking do-nothings and government teat suckers offers.
Destroyed, possibly indefinitely. Government agencies across the board are functioning worse. If you talk to people in the government and you read the reporting, they are functioning worse than they were before. There are also enormous, almost sort of unspeakably large ramifications for people in the global south, where the Musk-led cuts to foreign aid will lead to incomprehensibly needless suffering. I mean, people will most definitely die as a result of cuts to AIDS relief program PEPFAR. In fact, Musk's fellow billionaire Bill Gates warns that cuts to USAID could cost millions of lives throughout the world.
Yeah, like this guy gives a shit about that. That's his whole deal. His whole deal is to kill millions. This eugenicist is upset. His dad was a part of the eugenics, whatever it is. People want to depopulate. The whole thing's silly. These guys are into big government that's failing. And, Musk did whatever he did, which failed, right? But it's all, it's just there for everyone to see. All right, let's move on to the next thing here. So I want to see what RFK Jr. said about the Maha report. It's all of a sudden big news. So I watched a little bit during lunch, and they have something I just saw. I'll show you in a second. Why would that happen? Like RFK Jr. was big on science and real science and talking about how the mainstream science that was being presented was either incomplete or not factual, right? Which many of us agreed with. And he said if you saw the real science, you would have people would have a different opinion about all these subjects. And we know that the real science is behind. I mean, we know just from, all right, look at the obesity issue and the cancer issues and the heart disease issue. Childhood obesity, cancer, and heart disease being your number 1 and 2 killers, which is related to food. And we know the food industry is massive with its budget, right? All these things. So, you know, we know that there's science to back up all these claims about polyunsaturated fats and all these types of things. Well, I mean, I haven't read the science, but we see the results in terms of our health. We see that people who are eating processed foods and eating all these things with high in these bad fats and all the other things, sugars and whatever it is, has caused a massive childhood obesity and obesity in adults, and everyone's overweight, almost everyone overweight on top of that, to add to that, and then these health issues. So, you know, there's no reason to publish bad studies when you know you're up against the food industry and the pharmaceutical industry. These two massive industries that are trying to get you and embarrass you. So why the fuck would you publish studies that weren't correct? You know, just like this is how it always goes, right? And well, let's get into the other report here.
The White House hailed the first report from the Make America Healthy Again Commission as a game-changing document addressing chronic health problems in children. But as Notice first reported, the report contains some mistakes.
Look at this fucking ghoul here. Look at this is what they're putting out as people. You know.
Here's how Notice put it. Quote, Health Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. says his Make America Healthy Again Commission report harnesses gold standard science, citing more than 500 studies and other sources to back up its claims. Those citations, though, are rife with errors, from broken links to misstated conclusions. 7 of the cited sources don't appear to exist at all.
Okay, so, you know, he said he was going to do this with science, and he had to do it meticulously, right? So there's 2 things here. One, if he's reporting 500 studies, 7 studies are fake or wrong or don't exist or whatever it is, right? If there's something, disinformation that's put out there. You know, we're going to get into the RFK thing in a second here, but why wouldn't you say, well, the rest of the studies actually do back up the claims? You know, if he's posting 500 studies and you're going to get rid of 7 of them, and then you're going to say there's all these errors and broken links, broken links are whatever those are. And so, yeah, there's going to be mistakes in anything, right? And something like this, there might be some mistakes. So may be really bad mistakes, but you would have to also say that the other things were true. And you'd also have to say that kids are unhealthy because there's childhood obesity. And so this is where the mainstream media is fucked, right? Because after the pseudoscience they put out during COVID and all that bullshit, and all of a sudden they're into fact-checking science, you know, or questioning. They didn't question Fauci when he was proven over and over again to putting out pseudoscience. But no, now you're addressing something that has backing, but because of the food industry and the pharmaceutical industry.
My panel is back with me, including a reporter from Notice, Jasmine Wright, who asked the White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt about this yesterday.
We saw that already.
7 sources were completely non-existent. My colleagues, but
by the federal government.
I mean, I feel like I have so many things to say about this, but formatting issues is not one of them, right? Like 7 sources were completely non-existent. My colleagues, who I want to credit, Notice fellows like 22-year-olds, Emily Kennard and Margaret Mano, took 5 days going through 522 citations, checking them all, and 7 of them just frankly didn't exist.
But so what about the rest? Like the question would be, but what about the rest of them? Were the other ones accurate? Like just so... To be clear that, yeah, that sucks that they did that. That's fucked up they did that. That's incompetence. But was there any truth in the report at all? Because you're talking about science. So, you know, we know that this has backing. And so why the fuck would they not do a better job, Kennedy and those guys? I mean, it's always this way. why wouldn't they do a meticulous report? Why couldn't they have people fact check it like this? You know it's going to be fact checked by the fucking massive food industry. The media. This is some looks like some online site, whatever this girl's from. Notice, Notus, that there's going to be fact checking. Everything gets fact checked in the truth community, and so if you're going to put things out as scientific facts, you better make sure that it's all fucking like meticulous, and you better have people do what her people did. Like, people have to read through the studies and make sure everything works. You don't put anything out sloppy, right? You know what they're going for, the narratives. So these are the narratives for Kennedy, right? That it's pseudoscience, that he's some crazy anti-vaxxer, all these things that, these profiles they create for people. They've created a profile for Kennedy, unhinged, all the things that they want. Like what Alex Jones was the prototypical profile for the guy who represented the profile that they were trying to create for crazy right-wing nutjob conspiracy theorist. And so they're going to go with that. And so, like, unless you're a shill and you're working with them and you want to make people feel like you're doing something for them, with the Maha movement, and yet you're also sabotaging it with your bullshit reports. Because there's no way you should have had any errors at all, like even one, and now you have all these errors. And no matter how good the rest of the report is, and I searched for it, and I searched for Kennedy's response, he hasn't said shit. And it'd be nice to hear what he said. Is there somebody inside your agency that's working for the food industry and the pharmaceutical industry? And this is all it would take for Trump to go back in and take the pharmaceutical money, because this is they're going to embarrass him, and how fucking Trump is so fucking petty and whatever. So this is a fucking nightmare.
I don't think that that's a formatting issue. Others, of course, were a little bit more technical. Maybe some of the links were broken, or maybe some of the conclusions that they came to by using some of these valid authors or articles didn't match exactly what the article said. But it's not formatting issues. I also asked her.
So there was things in it there was valid studies. That would mean there's 493 valid studies and some broken links. And why don't you talk about, you're saying some of the conclusions are maybe a little of exaggeration. Where was your fact checking under Biden and the bullshit, the vax and all that other shit was falsy that turned out completely incorrect? That Joe Biden and all these people claimed the vax was going to prevent you from getting COVID at all, and that one turned out to be false. That if you did get sick, then they modified it to if you did get sick, it would be still mild, and that wasn't true. And if you got mildly sick, it would be, at least you wouldn't get hospitalized, and that wasn't true. And they said, well, if you get hospitalized, that'll be okay, but you won't die, and that turned out to be not true. So people died from COVID. They died after they got the vax. And so, all these claims that they made were false, and there was no science to back it. Where the fuck were you then, right? Where the fuck were you then? And all the other things that Fauci said that weren't true. But, now that your corporate masters, the food industry and the pharmaceutical industry and just the liberal media and all of it are, pushing for this. And I mean, you can't excuse Kennedy and the people for fucking not doing a better job of putting out the report if this is the case. But, the whole thing's fucked. They'll get you one way or another. So this shows you, I mean, this is everything you need to know about all that bullshit, right? Okay, so I have some things to catch up on here, which I'm not going to show you today. Some leftover things about Trump and Putin, which will probably be going on next week. These things come and go. But I want to wrap this up here with the Chrisleys.
New pardons by President Trump, and they're starting to follow a pattern. Late today, we learned from the White House that reality TV show couple Todd and Julie Chrisley are both getting full pardons. They spent nearly 3 years in prison so far after being convicted of conspiracy to defraud banks out of more than $30 million. The couple, best known for starring in the show Chrisley Knows Best, were also found guilty of several tax crimes, including attempting to defraud the IRS, which means they were attempting to defraud all of us who pay taxes. One of the Chrisleys' children spoke at last year's Republican convention. Today, an advisor to the president posted a video of him calling the couple's kids to give them the news.
It's a terrible thing, but it's a great thing because your parents are going to be...
Well, they were... do you think that some Southern I mean, where are the Grizzlies? Georgia? That some Georgia judges were this system fucked the Grizzlies over for defrauding banks, which is weird that Trump would back people over banks because banks are one of his handlers. But they would defraud banks and the IRS. That there's some kind of conspiracy to get these fucking dopes, you know, who are, I mean, like, just the whole thing looks fake, like the whole thing. Were they really in jail?
Free and clean, and I hope we can do it by tomorrow. I don't know them, but give them my regards and wish them.
Thank you so much, Mr. President.
Yes. How are you?
I just want to say thank you for bringing my parents back.
Yeah.
Thank you.
They were given a pretty harsh treatment based on what I'm hearing.
What I'm hearing, you mean you signed your, so you used AutoPet. What I'm hearing, I heard some shit. I don't know. I didn't look into it in any thorough way. I didn't have anything to make sure that, that I'm hearing that they've got a bad deal. So, they're white and they're Republicans and I think they like me, so I'm going to pardon them. I mean, I'm hearing some things.
Well, you briefly heard in that clip Savannah Chrisley, the daughter who spoke at the Republican National Convention in July. She also campaigned for the president on what was billed as the Team Trump's Women Tour. Also tonight, the New York Times is reporting former nursing home executive Paul Walzak is also getting a full pardon. And like the Chrisleys, he too was convicted of tax crimes, accused of siphoning some $10 million from employee paychecks under the pretext it was going to Texas. Instead, according to the New York Times, he spent some of it on a $2 million yacht for himself. And
it just sounds fair. I mean, he needed a yacht and it's $2 million. How was he going to get it otherwise?
Like the Chrisleys' daughter's appearance at the convention, according to the Times, Paul Walzak's mom raised millions of dollars for the president and other Republicans and attended a $1 million plate dinner at Mar-a-Lago. The paper reported he turned in a pardon application in January around the time of the inauguration. The Times says the application didn't focus on his crimes, but instead the political activity in favor of the president of his mom. And the pardon application even mentioned her efforts to sabotage the 2020 Biden presidential campaign by publicizing the diary of his daughter, Ashley Biden.
The one where she said that she used to, when she was a teenager, she used to shower with Joe. Remember that shit? Like how fucked up is this whole thing, right? What an absolute fucking corrupt ass mess. I mean, Trump's turning this into a banana republic. Biden was like fucking disaster. Like, when was the last good president? Like, was there ever one? Like, but in terms of, in my lifetime, there was not. Maybe Jimmy Carter was okay. I don't know. Like, whatever, what his corruption was. I mean, they got rid of the guy, so probably he was doing something right. But I mean, in my lifetime, Nixon actually looks pretty good. Fucking Nixon looks pretty good. All right, we got one more thing on the Grizzlies. So I watched some clips of this show. Here's the Grizzlies. They're waiting for them to get out of jail here. There's her daughter. She's got a Make America Great Again hat. The dad is like very effeminate and seems kind of gay. I mean, here she is here.
Let me read it. I hereby designate, direct, and empower the Attorney General as my representative to sign the grant of clemency to the person named. I hereby designate, direct, and empower the acting director of the Federal Bureau of...
Yeah, we get it. Boom.
...opportunity to have discussions with him, and he is going to bring change. He's going to expose the corruption, and he's going to hold people accountable.
Yeah, just like your parents. Your parents didn't do shit. They were fucking completely innocent of all the crimes. They're just reality TV stars. And because of their association with Trump, people made up shit. Banks made up that they defrauded them of $30 million.
Fight for these men and women and reforms, and especially for women in the system. We need more bills in front of Congress. And
she's over here
we
kissing
need to
babies and shit over here.
Savannah, do you know if they're still closing it down? I thought I heard on the news they were. Oh yeah,
so they are supposed to be, but I do know.
What's coming out here?
I ran out.
Where's the parents?
States that he is to be released immediately, so I'm hoping that they are getting him ready inside now to go. They are saying that they have to wait to see.
So you fucking put up this video saying Todd Crisley to be released from prison, and he went live, and fucking all we got was his goofy daughter. We didn't get that gay dude. All right, so, this is how fucked we are. Only spirituality will save this world. It's Paul Romano, definitely important for the apocalypse and the ascension. Everyone have a blessed day and be grateful.